Everyone. Happy Pride, Happy Queer Church. For this, I have so many thoughts around Pride, but most of the offerings I'll be doing this month in person and here are to just encourage you to think about Pride Month as a holiday, about Pride, especially the last weekend of Pride, as a holiday. And I say that because one of the ways that House of Our Queer tries to serve our community and our spiritual health, our nourishment, is by thinking about the ways that we keep track of time. One of the reasons that I think astrology is so popular right now, especially in our community, is that it helps us to keep track of time. It helps us to think about what is actually the ways that we are passing time, and it's not just every single day, and it's not just watching the news, and it is not just the Gregorian calendar and the work week and the seasons. Even there are ways that having a shared calendar is really helpful for our community. And so I think having a queer calendar is really important for our community. And so this is the start of Pride Month, but my encouragement is to really think about how can you make Pride Month something that is for you, that feels like a holiday. And I'm going to say this just to break it down the way that we think of it at House of Our Queer, that holidays serve a couple of purposes. One, like I mentioned, they help us keep track of time. It helps us think in our memory, well, where was I this time last year? Where was I this time 2 years ago? What was I doing? And when we think about that in a holiday, there's often some coming together, some type of celebration. So we can kind of go back in time and keep track of our time individually and as a community. The other thing is to celebrate. Holidays really at their essence are meant to say, I'm a special day. I'm not a regular day. I'm not just any old weekend. And so whether you're starting in Pride Month, whether you are kind of celebrating all year, I know my wife is watching a queer movie every day of the month. Like, you can do your thing, whatever you want to do. I have a million events that if you're on my newsletter or you want a copy of it, you've seen, or if you're following here, you'll see there's lots of ways for us to come together that I'm super excited about. But I also just want to encourage us, and as I shared on the first, Pride, especially that last weekend, June 28th, that is not just any holiday. That is the return and the remembering of the Stonewall riots, of the uprising, of a breaking point for our community. And we come back to celebrate that, what's been gained, what we're still fighting for, how they resourced and recharged each other, and how we can do that. So before we even do the reading, before we get into it, let's just take a moment to call out to our ancestors. I'm really big on ancestors as an external support for our spiritual health, for that energy part of us, for something that can clear our mind, but also reset our nervous system, connect to our bodies. Ancestor guidance is there for all of us, and for folks that aren't in bio lineages that either you know about or that you feel connected to, we can talk. But one other additional way to get ancestor support is through chosen ancestors, and we all have that. And if you're following House of Our Queer and you're in the queer community, you've got chosen ancestors that are alive at this time, especially, that are returning their energy, vibing up. So that's a lot of talking at the beginning. Thanks for going there with me. I get really jazzed about Pride holidays. So go ahead and just take a moment. Just relax for a minute. Just melt. Just maybe move your neck around or roll your shoulders or feel for a moment into your body. Maybe give yourself a squeeze. Just slow for a second and melt and let whatever came up today during the day, moments before you saw this, just let that go. Just carve out this moment, little church moment, and go ahead and we're going to attach to the very top here. Turn our attention here, very top there. That's our connection point to cosmos, ancestors, anything bigger than ourselves. And we're gonna send out a little beam, a little ancestral light, a flashlight, a spotlight. If you've ever seen those lights that kind of go all the way up into the sky, you kind of see them moving around like it's a movie premiere or something, a little movie premiere at the very top of your head. Go ahead and just send that light up. Turn that dial up. Beam a light up. And maybe if you want with your breath, maybe you breathe in and you fill yourself up with energy. And maybe as you breathe out, you send out some kind of beam, some kind of spark, some kind of call that says, I'm here. Thank you, ancestors, for guiding me. Thank you, queer and trans people, drag royalty of all time that's come before me. That's a part of the lineage that I'm in, that is here, that wants to guide, and whom I'm grateful to. And anyone who wants to guide or support me as I shape out this holiday for myself, I'm here. My light is on. I accept support and guidance. All right. And I'll let you play with that or continue that. I'm going to move into the reading. I have a fun little offering today. This is from Queer Magic. This is by Thomas Prower, LGBT Spirituality and Culture from Around the World. And something that's interesting, I love this book. It's really fascinating. The work Thomas did is really important. And I turned it over to Kuan Yin in China. This is her card in the Divine Femme guidebook by Megan Watterson. There's also Kuan Yin has her own cards, which many folks have as well. Kuan Yin, the goddess of compassion, and her mantra is, I recognize suffering in order to release it. Curiosity breeds compassion. She is all about compassion. In my time in Asia, there's Kuan Yin statues everywhere, especially in Penang, Malaysia, where my family's from. There's a big Kuan Yin statue in my favorite temple in Kalaxi. But there's a lot of connection to Kuan Yin and compassion. And whenever we're starting to think about a new holiday, or it's never, a new fresh start, how do we give compassion to ourselves? How do we extend that compassion to others? And it's in this book, I'm just going to read this. It's great. So Kuan Yin is the Bodhisattva of compassion. According to her legend, she attained enlightenment, but because she had compassion for humankind, didn't want to enter into nirvana, into like the oneness state, however you want to think of it, until all humans could come with her. So she's sort of this cycling back for our species until we can all kind of reach that level. However you want to think about that, whether you're into ascension stuff or not, doesn't matter. Let that float away if it's not important. The important is that she's here, and her energy, and working with her is for compassion for yourself and for others, to accept compassion. Sometimes that is really tricky. Maybe that's something you want to give yourself during this Pride Month. Maybe your identity or where it is or how you structure relationships has had a little sticky points. And you want to extend some compassion, maybe to your polycule, maybe to your chosen fam, maybe to your biofam or your first fam. How would Kuan Yin, compassion, and flow support you this Pride Month? So a question. And I just want to read here. It says, her place among queer positive deities comes from her being trans female, trans femme, and an icon in the LGBT movement in China, which I'd never thought about. I love the idea of her. She was worshipped for a long time as a man and then worshipped as a woman. And this idea of her being like trans femme makes so much sense and is so beautiful. How can we kind of channel that? And if you want to think of her as a chosen ancestor, someone in our lineage that might help give compassion to yourself, give compassion to others this Pride Month. I'm just going to read one more time her little mantra here is about the deep medicine that comes from simply being willing to bear witness to someone else's pain. I recognize suffering in order to release it. Curiosity breeds compassion. There's also a lot about which is like that curiosity part. Like, how can we stay curious? How do we maybe not, instead of going right to anger, be curious so that we can lead more towards compassion? How can we give that to ourselves and to each other, especially in our community this month? That's kind of, and I'll have different offerings throughout the month. So that's sort of the offering for this start, the first week of Pride Month. I also want to just name for astrology updates that next Wednesday is the full moon in Sag. So we're getting into and there's some astrology this week that also begins lucky season. So Sagittarius, it's a fire sign. It's the wandering sign, wanderlust, never quite wanting to stay still, always wondering what is next, never getting stuck. Sag is also really considered a lucky sign. Folks, especially that have their sun sign in Sag or have like stelliums or important placements in Sag. And one of the reasons that is that Sages are not staying still. And so luck, they can go find it. They're trusting themselves. They're trusting the universe. They're willing to make changes. They're willing to get out of their routines and try something new. And often that's what our luck is. We try something, and we try something else, and we try something else. If we don't